Good morning, everybody. So, quickly, we just look at WordPress REST API. Um, we all know what WordPress is, right? It's just a content management system. Just we present you with templates that you can use to build sites and deploy them ASAP. Some people also use it for backend solutions where you can keep your files and all of that. Some people also use it for blogs and whatnot. So I use it for blogs. I also use it as a backend solution to keep my files and all of that. Then we talk about REST. REST is simply representational state transfer. Think of it like you are taking the representation of something in a particular place and you are moving it to something somewhere else. So that's something you are moving to somewhere else. It's called a resource, right? So when you are talking about REST API is just one form of API. There are different forms of API. But in our case here, we are dealing with REST API. So imagine you have a resource somewhere that is hooked up in an API. You're now taking that resource from that place to another place with the aid of an endpoint. That endpoint is what you use to connect to the API. So as we go on, WordPress has loads of APIs. One of them is HTTP API. Another one is this REST API that we're about to talk about. They have about 10. You go to their codex.wordpress.org, you find all the others. So quickly, these are the things we'll be talking about. Introduction to APIs. I've talked about WordPress and the API already. The WordPress REST API, setting up the WordPress REST API, our workspace, plugin setup, and testing via Postman. So this will be very, very quick. Number one. So we'll probably not go through all of it, but at the end of the day, we'll come to understand what I'm talking about. The introduction to APIs. APIs just stand for Application Program Interface. It's basically a way for your own application to talk to another application. Like the backend guys now, PHP guys, they build something, and I have to tap into that. I have to tap into that particular application they built on their own end to be able to make my own work. A very good example is social lender. There are a lot of endpoints that are flying from one place to another place. So there are some things I can't do, like register a new user now on Ambassador menu without an API endpoint from the backend guys. So APIs just help my own application to talk to the application that Abubakar or any other person from the backend team has built. And popular APIs that we know, we probably know these things, but we don't know that they work via API. Google Maps, you have Google Maps in some applications. It's just API. Twitter APIs. Sometimes you can, like on some WordPress pages, you can see Twitter feeds, like tweets of that particular user on that site. So what that person is doing is just tapping into Twitter API. And benefits of API. APIs can extend the functionality of applications or websites. So you can also use APIs for login procedure. Like if you check on social lender, you see connect to Facebook, connect via Twitter, connect all of those things. We are using their APIs. Do you understand? All right. And apart from that, good APIs can also make your applications more interactive and enjoyable. That's basically self-explanatory. And then for companies that create APIs can help increase interest in their other products. Like we all know how popular Google is. Google is like a giant, and they have so many APIs that you can use. So start in this is from way back in 2017. Most of all these sites were accessed via APIs. That's just what this chat is talking about. And we can see Netflix there, we can see Twitter, we can see Google Maps, we can see Facebook. I'm sure this chat has changed right now because this was 2017. And that site, the programmable web, they have like 1,001, even more than that, directories of APIs that you can tap into, and these APIs are mostly free. So for anybody that is interested in working with APIs to extend functionality of anything you are building, you can just check out Programmable Web. Very good. And there's also this API I found yesterday. I can't remember the name now. Kanye or something. So what it does for people that love Kanye West music, just produces random quotes from his songs and all of that. Kanye the rest, you can check it out. I think it was hosted on Heroku, so that's okay. Back setting up the WordPress API. So basically, uh, like I mentioned WordPress before, we'll be using WordPress for this, and while we'll be using WordPress, we'll also be using a free hosting service called our Workspace. Now, what this hosting service gives us access to is the configuration of the WordPress site. So what you do first, you first of all you have to create you create a workspace. Now, creating an account with a workspace, you can either choose a Joomla account. You go here to the exactly installer part of our workspace. After signing up, so when you go to the exactly installer, it will ask you if you want to choose WordPress or Joomla. I'm trying to open. To ask you if you want to choose WordPress or Joomla. Okay, so open that. So for my own case, I actually chose WordPress. You can see that WordPress or Joomla. So I chose WordPress in my own case, and the remaining part of the configuration is just simple and straightforward. You don't need to do anything special. Choose a theme. After choosing a theme, choose a particular configuration that is not important that you can do later. Then the other important bit is to to enter the same email account and password you use to access the site in the first place. And after that, it's going to build some files for you. In building those files, you can find those files in the file manager part of this our Workspace account. And those files, after building those files for you, it's going to direct you to the WordPress site that was created for you. So this is the file manager part. Now we can see this is the site that was created for me. It's the WordPress site. Now this file here, this HTTP access, is the first part for configuration, right? So we'll come back to this in a bit. Now I've mentioned creating a free Workspace account. I also mentioned that the WordPress account will be generated after you've registered on our Workspace. So what you have to do next is to log into the WordPress account. The WordPress account that is generated, I think I have that open here. I remember the password. So after logging in, you are supposed to install two plugins. First plugin is the REST API v2. REST API version 2. That's the first plugin. I think it's mentioned here. Okay, yeah. The WP REST API version 2. You have to install it and activate it immediately. The second one is the JWT authentication for WordPress API. That's what WP stands for. You only install that one. So after the installation, you now go back to our Workspace, which is the part I said I was going to come back to. Now, for our information, JWT is simply JSON Web Token. We'll come back to why it's important in a bit. So this is the WordPress site that was generated for us by our Workspace. And I mentioned two things about plugins. So I'll just go to install plugins because I've already installed them before now. Now, the first plugin is the WP REST API, which is this one. You can already see it here. WP REST API was installed and activated immediately. It's just to help us get the functionality of REST API to this WordPress account. so that we'll be able to use things called HTTP transfer protocol. That's what it is. It's just I talked about resource, carrying the resource from one place to another place. So is that those HTTP, the HTTP protocols, or rather HTTP verbs? Some of us are familiar with get, put, patch, post, delete, right? We understand what those things are. So those things are what will help us to get resources from this particular WordPress account to either our website or a mobile application, anything you want to use it for. So for this one, you just install it, which is the JWT authentication for WordPress API. After installing it, you will now come back to our workspace. Then there are some things you need to do in this our workspace. The first one, there's actually a documentation. Okay. These were the things I was talking about. This is the part where okay. So there is actually documentation for the way you are supposed to set up this WordPress account. That's the link. I'm going to drop the link later. The first thing you have to do is this part here. You just have to add this part to this HTTP file. Then this part. This is the first one you do. The next one, you go to your WP config file. You have to add two things. Now, you can't see the WP config file because I've configured this already. But what I'll do for us is, I'll just show us. I'll show us what the docs look like. So yeah, I'm trying to look for, let me just copy it from that link, from the okay. Let me just continue. So the configuration is just in that documentation. Later I'll open it up if it agrees to open. So after the HTTP access file, you also go to the WP config file. There are just two things you need to do in WP config file. Add a secret key and allow for cause. Cause is cross origin source. Yes, cross origin, something like that. It's just for you to be able to transfer files from your WordPress to somewhere else that is not WordPress. That's what it just does. It does not, it allows permission, so to say. It's just a permission plugin. So after configuration, then what you do is to add, for testing purposes, what I did was to add some posts to this WordPress account so that we'll be able to test the plugin that was installed, whether they're actually working. I added two posts. Those two posts can be seen from here instead of waiting for that guy to load. So this is the login in part. Now, these are like two of the posts I added to the WordPress site. Then what I did next, just to be sure that the plugin that I installed here, I added 4 posts to the site. Those are the 4 posts. To be sure that the WordPress, the plugins I added were actually working, I have to use, I used this gadget, or what do I call it now? This tool to test the API. So also in the documentation that I mentioned before, you will see this log. What this means is whatever resource we are getting from the WordPress site should be sent as a JSON file. That's what this WP JSON first of all means. Then this V2 here is tapping into that plugin that we installed. If you remember the WP V2, REST API V2 that I mentioned earlier. That's what this one is working with. Then this post is the slug in this site here that we are concerned about. I just showed us some posts here. These things are what we call the posts. So from here, all I just need to do now is to send a GET request. These are the things I mentioned earlier: GET, post, put, patch, and delete. They are HTTP verbs. So now to test the plugins that we installed earlier, that I installed earlier, all we just need to do is to send this request. And all of those posts, the posts that I already had in the, I need to scroll. So all the posts that I installed, that I put in the, are you ready there? The post and the content, everything is showing in that postman, right? So everything is here, the four of them, the four posts. So you might be wondering, what can I use this for? Now in our mobile app class, one of the things we teach the students is how to get resources from an endpoint, which is basically what we do like every single day here. So what we use is Cordova. We just use Cordova to build a very, very simple mobile app. Then we do all of there's a part of the JavaScript code where you have to write some particular lines of code to get these same things that I got with this Postman. So the good thing about Postman is you don't need to write any code for Postman. If at all you are going to get posts from the resource. So Postman just helps you to test whether that thing you created or whether those posts you put there are actually there. So but in the class, what we do, we create the app, then we write the code and we try to get all of these posts to show in a particular way on the app. So the applications are probably endless. Like if you go to some mobile sites, you'll notice that something is loading. It's actually trying to get resources from somewhere. So this very simple application, this very simple thing we just did, is the same logic that works for all of those sites. So that's everything. Do you have any questions? Questions? Go on. Slug. Okay, so you have a link, you have a web address, let's say like CNN.com, and CNN.com, they have articles inside of those. So someone that is reasonable will always want to say, so that if you want to read those articles, just say /articles. Now that entity after that, the main web address, the entities after the main web address, that's after that .com, that / all those things there are called slug. You can also check them. SLUG, that's just one. Do you have any other? So if we don't, this is documentation that I mentioned earlier. This whole presentation is also on speaker deck, so I think I'll just drop a link on the good page. So if that's all, then I'll send them.